According to Barna, 95% of all Christians have never won a soul to Christ. Let's change the stat.
Welcome to GoCast, a podcast designed to inspire and equip pastors and leaders to lead soul-winning churches. We have a mission to go and make disciples. This is GoCast.
Hey everyone, welcome to GoCast. I'm your host, Kelly Stickle, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Tim Tribble. Tim, we've got a great conversation coming up today with Pastor Jonathan Lambert of Experience Church in Calgary. That church has been on my radar for a little while, and it's been great getting to know Pastor Jonathan. He planted and made with ARC at Canada and made a big splash. I mean, the church is growing really well, but I've noticed as well over the last number of years that he talks, a lot about Easter services, and I've noticed on social media these guys go all out when it comes to Easter, and they paint the town literally with Experience Church, and really do really amazing things at Easter. We've got Easter coming up; it's only a month away. And so this conversation, I dive into a little bit of what he does for Easter. So some great ideas with Pastor Jonathan, and that I think is going to really help a lot of us pastors planning for Easter. So what is, you've been with us now for over 7 years.
Yep.
And so what's been your most memorable Easter service that we've done?
We were lucky enough to move here in the timing of Easter, and so one of our first services that we came to here, we were blown away because we had come out of an environment or a church environment anywhere where baptisms, spontaneous baptisms, that kind of stuff didn't happen every week. And so the first service that we sat in on, there ended up being 96 people getting baptized.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, it was completely memorable, and for my wife and I, it completely rocked our perspective of what church could be, which just ignited the flame of bringing us out here to begin with. So it was super memorable.
Yeah, so what we did in that service, it took a lot of planning, is we brought in a whole bunch of clothes and T-shirts, and we had underwear, we had makeup, we had no excuse. We took away every excuse for someone to get baptized, and then we preached the message. And at the end of the service, we opened it up and said, "Hey, if anyone wants to get baptized, this is what it is," and didn't have a clue how many people were going to get baptized.
No idea.
And the service went on and on and on, because we had 96 people at that time. That's the time we only had one baptism tub at the time. So we had 96 people
in one service
come through, which was, people were crying, and there was families hugging, those who were getting, we had someone get saved just before they got into the tub. It was a very memorable service, incredible. But it's little ideas like that make what we do so worth it. Totally. And Easter is a great time to maximize. You got more visitors than you normally do. You have family coming in. It's easy to preach the gospel message with the Easter message. And so how do you maximize Easter? How do you maximize people coming into your church? How do you get more visitors coming in? How do you maximize the Easter service? So there's some great amazing ideas from Pastor Jonathan Lambert of Experience Church. So let's go to that conversation now. Well, hey, Jonathan, welcome to GoCast. It's so good to have you on the program, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. What an honor.
It's great, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in ministry and came to pastoring in Calgary.
Man, it's obviously a big journey. Ministry, how did I get started in ministry? I was one of those guys, man. I grew up in 90s youth group.
Yeah.
So I don't know if everyone's experience was the same, but at least where I was, kind of the hero of 90s youth group attendees was youth pastor. There weren't a lot of examples of cool Christian men outside of your youth pastor. And so there's so many guys that just I'm going to go into ministry, because that's what we didn't know how else to be a Christian and be a man.
Yeah.
And so kind of I think there was some of that involved in the early stages of I'm not really sure what to do, but I've seen this model and it looks good.
Yeah.
Then you quickly realize that ministry is a terrible thing if you're not supposed to be. Well, everyone's called to ministry, but vocationally, it's a nightmare. It's not what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And so kind of messed around with a few different things through school, went to Bible college, started as a worship pastor, actually, and so did that for a number of years.
Yeah.
And there's just always, when it comes to church planting, there's always something inside it. My wife and I loved the church. So our favorite part of being worship pastors was everybody coming together, like all ages, places, stages, and loved the opportunity to use the platform of music to help people have like an intimate connection with Jesus. And I think that desire to help people have an intimate connection with Jesus is still sort of the driving force, but your platform changes. And so it used to be through the lens of worship. Now it's through like church planting and being lead pastoring. And so we were in a spot where, the worship pastor, there's only so much they want you to speak into.
That's right.
They kind of want you to sing, and that was kind of it. So there, at least in our context, there wasn't a lot of like leadership room or room to grow in leadership. And so we started to have opinions and thoughts and ideas about other areas of the church. And we got some advice that, hey, maybe that means you're supposed to branch out into other areas and explore other things. And probably one of the most freeing things in our process was when we were talking to a leader about how we were maybe unsatisfied in a current situation, but didn't want to feel rebellious or like we weren't honoring.
Right.
And just we're reminded that, hey, not everybody thinks that way. Not everybody looks at the big picture and says we could do this differently or we could reach more people. And so,
right.
So it was a really freeing thing for us to be like, hey, that's like you can honor through those feelings, but know that like that's something that God's put inside of you for bigger picture leadership. And so you've got to run with that, not run from it. And so that was a really freeing thing for us. And then
so good.
Through a lot of different moments, ended up in Calgary in February of 2012.
Yeah.
Didn't know anybody, but moved and just wanted to be, we were in Vancouver, or had been in Vancouver for a long time, and then in Fort McMurray for a couple of years, and just wanted to be somewhere with 4 seasons. And God was telling us to start a church, and we drove in the first time, like, man, this is it. This is where we have to be. And bought a house, sight unseen.
Wow.
And just rolled up February 2012, and then the Experience Church started that September.
Wow.
It's kind of our Cole's Notes version on how we got there.
Wow, that's really cool. So tell us a little bit about Experience Church. I mean, so it's 7 years old. Man, you're planting churches, you got campuses. Talk to us about how the church is doing and where you're at now.
Yeah, church we're coming up towards our 7th birthday, so we're pretty amped on that. 7's a big biblical number, so I don't know what we're going to do with it yet, but we'll figure something out. We're running kind of anywhere 1,500 people on a weekend.
Wow.
Currently have 3 campuses. Just purchased our first permanent building.
I saw that. That looks awesome, man. That's so exciting.
So demolition and construction on that starts probably September 20th.
Wow.
So that's kind of like we're excited. We are we love worship, so there's big value on worship here, and our outreach teams are doing amazing things in the city.
Yeah.
So we love it. It's family church, so it's very diverse as far as especially age demographics. And we've got a lot of like grandparents, their kids and grandkids all attending together, which is really special.
That's really cool.
We love that, and there's a lot of the younger generation too. A lot of young families.
Yeah. And
every campus looks a little bit different, but that's a little bit about us and where we're at. So
that's really cool.
Passionate about the city.
Yeah, so you're very focused on outreach, evangelism, salvations, and growing the church through the unchurched. So talk about how many salvations or baptisms did the Experience Church have last year?
Last year we had 854 salvations.
Wow.
That's like we don't track like we do hands up at the end of our services.
Yeah.
But we track cards. So we want to get a card, and we need to have a way to follow up and connect with somebody. And so that's 854 people that filled out a card, and
wow.
Yeah, took a step of faith. And so we for the most part are able to actually say, where almost every one of those people are, because we've had their info and we followed up at some measure. Some of them have attended and stayed. Some of them are in other churches. Some of them were visiting from out of town. So it's important to us that we kind of keep track with all of them as best as we can. So
yeah, so good, because it's so much more than just hand going up and the salvation going up. I really like that how how you're tracking, because it's not just about praying a prayer, but it's about discipleship and following through, and you're tracking people that you can follow through with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big key for us.
That's really cool. So tell me about somebody that put their hand up, filled out a card, came to the church, how their life was miraculously changed after they became born again.
Oh man, like every story's got an element of like crazy to it, you know.
Yeah,
every time somebody gets saved and you start hearing their story, like, oh my God, I can't believe that we got to be a part of that and that's been your journey. I won't use any like specific names, but I'll use specific details. So if they listen, they'll probably know who they are. But there's like one that stands out. Man, we had a mom. We do outreaches in different communities, and so we had been doing some stuff with her kids. We created a kid drop-in space in one of the communities, and so her kids were coming out, and she had actually just lost her husband in an accident and had 3 little kids, and so like heartbreaking story. But we send buses into those neighborhoods and bring people to church. And so her and her family came. I think she drove herself, but we were doing the invite to church, and she came and got saved. And since then, I mean, she's like an incredible mom, incredible family. But like since then, has been like gotten involved. She's got this social circle. She's got all these friends have come around her and supported her. Her kids are growing up in community. Like they're in youth and actively involved in our kids ministry. She's taken a leadership role in the church, and so she's serving. She's not just like serving; she's leading other people as well.
That's awesome.
Leadership lane. So that's a pretty cool one. Obviously, the details of the story really they're heartbreaking but inspiring all at the same time. And so
wow.
She would be one of many like that. And every story is so unique but so miraculous.
Yeah,
I could sit here and tell you hundreds of them, but that's one that just pops in the top of my head.
That's really cool. So you guys do different outreaches. You're sending buses into communities to pick up people. What's been the most effective strategy as a church for winning souls?
Oh man, I think it's really hard to point to one thing, because I think that if you try and break down soul winning to one initiative, then you've gotten too narrow with it. Yeah. I think as a church, like everything that you do has to be about helping people meet Jesus. Yeah. So I couldn't say like, hey, there's this this is our soul winning strategy. I think the strategy is that the mission of the entire church and everything that we're doing is to try and help people make that connection. Wow. And so I think that actually has been part of the, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say success of it, because it's really not anything we've done. Like obviously God breathes and things happen, but we've given God space to meet people at every stage, every area. So our community things have been a huge win. Our outreach pastor is incredible, Pastor Kyle, and we basically went into the city and said, how can we serve? And so we got given access to one Calgary housing community. Yeah. And so that was great. And then we started doing parties there, and then people were getting saved and coming to church. And then we got into another community. And then about a year ago, we had served, we had been actively serving about 100 Calgary housing residents. But there are, I think, 7,500 in the city, and so we just kind of said to the city, we want to serve all of them in the next 5 years. We want to have a footprint in every area. And so since that, so that's only in the last 8 months, we've gone from serving about 100 to we've served over 2,000 now in that span. So through a Christmas outreach, basketball groups, getting into apartment complexes, like it's opened up. We're doing a financial training for people in those, like it's just amazing. So a lot of those things have given us like huge inroads into people's lives, and we're seeing some great church connection out of it. So, but it really is a holistic, like we don't have like an evangelism person or focus. Yeah. Everybody's doing it all the time.
That's really good. I love what you said though about the question you asked though is how can we serve in our city? And you asked the city, how do we serve? I love that focus, because I think too many times, as a church, we expect, well, the community's got to come to us, and we're just waiting for people in the community to walk through our doors. But man, Jesus's ministry was, he went in and he healed the sick first, and he met the needs first, and he fed the hungry first, and then he would preach the gospel. So man, I think that's a really, really big key to doing outreach, is just asking the community in our city, man, what do we serve? What can we serve?
Absolutely. And it's taken a bit of time to build trust. Again, I can't take much credit for it, although I'm I cheerlead and support everything that's happening, but it's taken time to build the trust and relationship. But yeah, it's been, it's just so critical to what we're doing now that we have those relationships, and that's been amazing. Yeah,
well, it's going to take time to build that trust, because everyone's going to go, well, what do you guys want? Well, no, actually, we just want to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We just want to serve. and out of serving, you're creating relationships with people in need, with people in the church who are meeting that need. Man, of course, they're going to soften their hearts to the hope that is Jesus. That's really good. I love that, man. So you're also in leadership with ARC Canada. So talk to me about why you're so passionate about church planting. ARC's known for church planting, Association of Related Churches, and planting churches all over, and helping pastors to plant churches across this country. So, man, talk to me about why you're so passionate about being a part of ARC and about church planting in particular.
Well, I mean, I'm convinced that church planting is God's plan A for reaching every person on the globe. And I know that means churches are going to look very different in different spaces and places, but
yeah.
There's nothing like the potential of a life-giving church. And I think the key is that it's life-giving, not life-taking. And so like what you referenced, it's getting churches into communities that are looking for ways to add life and have positive impact in the community, not looking to be served by the community and just have people show up to them. So I do think there's a difference. And so, but we just continue to see it happen, and even down to the missions potential of a great church. Like you could raise money to do something internationally or whatever that looks like, but if you can plant a church and rally people and get hundreds, maybe thousands of people behind a vision, and then they're all connecting their resources together and their passion and energy and creativity together, you're just going to, the investment, I mean, on a real practical ROI terms, the investment in a new church is going to go so much further than putting it almost anywhere else, because the multiplied effect is, is beyond crazy.
Yeah.
And so we're on a personal level, I love church. I love the idea of people coming together and not just connecting, but staying connected. And I think that's a big thing too, that we're trying to help create spaces where it's not so much about fixing every issue and saving the world on one Sunday. It's about building a space where people are willing to come back, because if people will come back, then you actually have the chance at long-term relationship. And so, just passionate. I think there's we are an untapped church planting market in Canada.
Yeah, so true.
There are still hundreds and hundreds of leaders out there who have a church in their heart, but just haven't known what's the avenue, what's my lane, how do I deal with, or even people that were like Natasha and I, maybe a little unsettled where we were. Not that where we were was negative, but we just had a bit of a dream and a picture in our own heart, and they just don't know where to go or where to turn to. And so I love ARC, because we're just trying our best to be like, hey, like, we'll help. Like, if you've got a dream, we'll help. And love church planting, and just think there's nothing like a healthy church to impact the community.
That's so good. So how many churches did you guys help this year get planted in Canada?
So let's see. So ARC in Canada, we're really kind of in our third year of operation.
Yeah, so just getting started.
Just getting started. So in the last, gotta think this through for a second. In the last year, if we go like the last full year, I think we did 3 last fall.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers right in front of me. So we're at 17 total.
Yeah.
We did about, I think it was 3 last fall, and the 3 that got planted last fall are just like thriving. We've got we've got 2 getting planted here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then we have 7 pastoral couples right now in process to plant in 2020.
That's so good. So let's just
Great. So
so the 3 that got planted in the last fall, what kind of salvations and numbers? Because I mean, you plant a church, you're going to see a whole bunch of unchurched people come in. That's one of the peaks for reaching soul winnings is with church planting. So what kind of numbers are they running, souls getting saved from just 3 churches being planted last fall?
Yeah. So I'll give you like just a few that are kind of in that first year to year and a half range that I know the numbers of off the top of my head. There's one in Edmonton called Evolve Church, a great church. And so they launched last September.
Yeah.
And they'd be running consistently kind of 200. I mean, if pastors are listening, I might be butchering this, but they're seeing like 200 plus every weekend right now, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
They're cruising. And I believe the last time we chatted, they had already seen like 50 plus salvations. So again, I have to double check that.
Wow, that's great.
But it's all varying degrees. So the average that we're seeing right now is like first Sunday, 244 people show up.
Wow.
First Sunday. That's the average. And last year in our church plants in Canada, there were just over 2,500 salvations. So that's kind of where that's at overall.
So good.
But yeah, that church in Edmonton, Evolve, is a great one. Slate Church in Waterloo launched kind of in that same time frame earlier in the year. But they had over 600 on their first Sunday.
Wow.
And now are running. They're running about 750 a weekend now, and they're still just over a year.
Wow.
And people are getting saved every week. So it just
That's
different
awesome.
pockets, different places. But yeah, the average has been about 244, and they're self-sufficient within 6 months, and people are getting saved. So it's been so much fun.
That's awesome. Man, so I mean, your Experience Church, you're coming up on your 7th anniversary, and I've been hearing about you guys for the 7 years. I got people that are always in my ear going, "Man, have you seen what Experience Church is doing?" Because you guys have an incredible presence on social media, and we come across you guys everywhere. So I mean, talk to me about that. You do a great job with social media. So talk to me about your thoughts on churches utilizing social media, and what advice would you give to a pastor who wants to improve their presence online?
Oh man, when I saw that question, I shuddered because I don't know if anyone's ever fully pumped about their social media presence, but
it's so true. We get told we're doing a good job too, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to work on it. I mean, social media is like your first impression, because anybody that's going to come to your church, they're always going to check you out on social before they show up.
That's true.
And so you've got to, I think, as far as what we're attempting to do, whether we're always hitting the target, I don't know, but the attempt is always that we're trying to reflect the feeling, the vibe, the culture of a Sunday, and what the experience is going to be like on our social media, so that people can look, and it builds a little bit of expectation, hopefully positive anticipation for what they're going to see when they walk through the doors.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to make sure that that's consistent. And so, as far as like actual strategy within like our posts and what we're sharing, again, we're trying to share a wide variety of people. So we want to make sure that what we're promoting in a sense on social is a true reflection of who's in the church, but also realizing that you're going to get more of what we promote.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make sure that we show our different demographics and families and children and all that sort of thing. And then, we're trying to make it conversational. So we're trying to do our best to engage with people, especially through Insta stories and things like that, where you're asking questions, getting them to give feedback, even if it's about ridiculous things. Then you want them to be inspirational to some level. So
yeah.
My hope is that when somebody looks at an EC post, they're inspired at some level, like it makes their day a little bit better. At least it's like a helpful thought. And then obviously there's a promotional aspect to it too, but for the most part, I think everybody finds the promotional posts just nobody wants to see them. It just feels like an ad.
Yeah.
So if they're conversational and inspirational, that probably does all the promoting you need, without just using it to share details all the time. So back in the early days, it was always just details. It's like, hey, don't forget we have church tomorrow. Sign up for this thing, do that.
Yeah.
And they're just getting no engagement. So we just tried to make it more conversational and whatnot. So
that's so good. I recently heard a teaching on that same thing about utilizing social media, and one of the things that they said is it has to be social. It's social media that we are so used to. We're a generation that is so used to broadcast media, where we're being told and it's broadcast, and they said no. What's going to engage is exactly what you're saying. It's being social. It's inviting conversations. It's creating that, rather than just, hey, church is tomorrow. Hey, we got this coming up. That's broadcast media. That's advertising. But social is inviting them into an experience, into a conversation, and engaging them that way. And you guys do a great job of that. I love your talking a little bit about your Easter campaign, because you guys, man, at Easter, you guys you blitz social media, websites. I mean, you blitz the community. You got people on the street. Yeah, I mean, it's a big thing for you guys. At least from my perspective, that's what I'm seeing. So, talk to you a little bit about a push like that, a special event like that, and why.
Yeah, I think for us, obviously Easter's a big one, right? Like people are more prone to accept an invitation to church at Easter than any other time of the year.
Yeah,
and so we go big. It's like there's two parts to it. So we go really big on one hand, because there's always a chance that somebody's going to see something, whether it's a billboard, transit ads, posters downtown, social. So there's a chance that someone will see it and be like, oh, I really need to go to church this Easter. The greater impact we find is that the more we do as far as, especially around Easter, the more we do as far as advertising, social promotions, and even things around the city, the more confidence we're giving the people from our church to extend an invite.
Right.
And so the goal for us at Easter is that we advertise so much that when somebody takes an invite from Experience Church and gives it to a coworker or a neighbor or a friend, they've seen it already. So that's the goal.
That's cool.
It softens the invite. It makes it easier for somebody from our church, because at the end of the day, like, really, people probably aren't going to, there's not that many people that are just going to wander in without a personal invite.
Yeah.
And so we really do everything publicly just to empower the personal invite. And so that's at the core of like our strategy behind any public advertising, is really just empowering the personal invite. And so we give the people in our church, like, are proud when they're going downtown on transit, and it's like, EC, our Easter logo that we've kind of been running with the last few years is the skull. And so, the skull is up everywhere. Yeah. And, it's kind of an intriguing graphic. And so it's amazing, though, how much more confident somebody is to invite if they're passing an invitation with the skull, but they've been seeing it on their entire commute. We had one person say that it felt like they live in the Southeast and they were headed downtown for work. And they're like, man, it felt like Experience Church's Easter ads were following me the entire journey, because they were just at every stop. And so that's kind of that's really the heart behind it, because it's the public stuff is to empower personal invite. The other thing that happens around Easter every year that has been a big win for us is we do something called bring3.com. And so we just ask the whole church, we just have this form on the domain, and we say, like, hey, who are the 3 people that you're praying for and believing are going to come with you this Easter? So good. People start populating the list, and so we get hundreds and hundreds, thousands of names, and then we've got prayer teams that are praying over every name individually for weeks as we lead into Easter. I think that just gives some spiritual responsibility to people as well. So those two things, kind of, as far as our Easter campaigns, those are the big pieces for us. That's so good. So what kind of numbers did you have last Easter, for instance? Last Easter, we had just under 2,300 at Easter. Wow. That's awesome. That's incredible. What I love about what you just said, and I think for pastors listening or leaders listening, is, I mean, there's an extra investment in advertising dollars and in print costs and in social media pushes.
around Easter. And I think what's really cool about that is a lot of times that's a really smart investment, because you're taking a high peak season where people are more likely to visit a church, and you're putting your investment and your advertising dollars into that season and saying, okay, and encouraging your people and partnering with the invite, because the invite is probably still the most powerful way to get new people into the church, way more powerful than a flyer or an ad. The invite is, and especially going to get them to stay because they came with a friend. So I love how you're partnering that together, but you're putting that investment into a harvest season. You're saying, okay, this is a harvest season. We're going to invest here, rather than doing the same type of money in summer. How
Right. Well, exactly. Like, there are really three natural seasons in our Western calendar. Like, there's Easter's obviously a big one. September is a big one for people starting new, as you know, and then January.
So you're investing in the harvest times, but in the down times and the other times where you're not investing in advertising and outreach, I mean, it allows you to disciple, and you're investing in other parts of the church to disciple those that came in during harvest time. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For us, especially, like, each of those big harvest times are at the beginning of small group semesters.
Yeah.
So the goal for us is we go hard early September, early January, and around Easter, and they all tend to flow right into a natural small group season. And so then the hope is that then you've got all those new people are connecting in a group of interest, but where they're also going to get discipled.
Right.
Learn, grow in their faith.
That's so good. So, I mean, you've got Experience Church has got multiple generations. Like you said, you've got the grandparents coming to church with the parents, with the kids and the grandkids, which is amazing. But you do have a lot of young volunteers, and where a lot of churches will struggle with getting young people involved in church today, if not just getting them to attend. So, talk to us about engaging the next generation in church more than just in the youth group.
Right. My personal take on it is just that they need a cause. And so I think when the cause is just building the church,
yeah,
it doesn't quite have the impact. But when you connect the cause to the impact they're making on their friends, people in the city, especially as you connect, hey, like, as the church thrives, our social justice initiatives get stronger.
Right.
We're reaching into homeless communities where more people are getting saved. But it's always trying to make that connection, like, to a deeper why.
Right.
I think in my own story, always had great churches growing up, but a lot of times it was a lot about the church and less about the impact of the church. And so we're trying to make sure the causes that we're fighting for on the forefront of what we're doing, and that's obviously people. And I think I don't love all the criticism that millennials tend to take. I think a lot of it's unfair in the sense that, I mean, if you can get a younger person passionate about something, there's really nobody better to have on your side,
right,
than somebody. And I do see that in a lot of our young leaders, our young team members, that they're passionate. So they believe in the cause of the church, not just the church being the cause. So it's a bigger pitch, it's a bigger vision cell. But when they get it, man, they give their lives to it. And so that would be something that I think not just myself, but our whole team has really embraced. Like, hey, what can we get these guys passionate about? And even on staff, I mean, I'm the old guy on our staff. It's a young team, but they're passionate, and so it really is, just trying to present the greater cause.
That's really cool.
The cause of Christ carries a lot more weight than the cause of the church, even though the church is the vehicle to get us there.
Right.
And so doing our best to try and keep that why in front of every generation, but in particular, a generation that's looking for purpose and wants to make sure that if they do something, that it's something of value and of especially social significance.
That's so good. and involving them in that. But I mean, leading with why, I think that is a huge key. Not just for the young people, that every generation responds to that at a whole nother level. And they'll buy in and push back, as push past the tiredness or the feelings of disillusionment at times that come with volunteering on a regular basis, and that, I mean, you can push past through that stuff when you lead with the why. That's really, really powerful. Man, that's so good.
Well, I think giving them like keeping a good feedback loop is also helpful. Like they're not just obey the commands of a leader generation, and so it's always just that, like, what do you see? How can we improve? And trying to keep that constant flow of communication too, I think has been very helpful.
That's really good. Awesome. So is there anything, this has been so rich, this has been so good. Thanks for coming on. Is there anything that I should have asked, but didn't?
Oh man, I don't know. You're the boss. Like, I'm trying to take notes on how to ask good questions. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this, man. I know that there's pastors listening that would love to learn more about what you're doing, or kind of take a peek at what you guys are doing online and what's going on with Experience Church and expanding campuses, and even with ARC and all that kind of stuff. So where can our listeners connect with you online?
Yeah, I mean, experiencechurch.ca is the website, and from there, you can get to YouTube, and we've got Experience Church app. EC Calgary is the current social handle for all things Experience Church, and then EC Jonathan L is my own personal one. So that's kind of that's where we are. Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for this stuff. This has been so good, and it's been great to have you on.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
What a great conversation with Pastor Jonathan Lambert of Experience Church. So inspiring. So many nuggets in there, man. That was man, I love these conversations. Yeah. So good. All right. What was your big takeaway?
So if I were to skip all the way to the beginning where he said vocational ministry can be a nightmare if it's not what you're called to do. Wow, and I think so many pastors end up in the position where they've even grown up in church, and it was their upbringing, and they just feel like it's something that they're supposed to go into rather than something that they're called to go into. And they end up banging their heads against the wall, figuring out, why can't I make this happen? And honestly, it's something that you need to be called to do in order to handle it.
So true. I read a stat years ago. I don't know if it's the same today or not, but I think it was well over 90% of people that were in seminary. So these are people that went to Bible college and then you went to the extra. Seminary is basically you getting your law degree. Yeah. So this is the extra.
It's the bar exam.
So you've already gone through 4 years of Bible school, and then you're doing seminary. 90% of them felt like they were not necessarily called to ministry, but they thought that ministry was a good vocation. It was a good job. And I was like, I kind of laughed, and I was like, that's no. And then it's funny though, it's not, but it's ironic that there's over 90% of pastors that start off in ministry don't finish in ministry.
Right.
And I think there's a correlation.
Yeah.
Like between whether if you're doing this just for a job, or because of social esteem, or because you think it's an easier work, or you think it's a public affirming job. That's not it. It's a call, and it's a call only. So I love when Pastor Jonathan said that and clarified that, because it really is. There's the ups, the downs, all the in-betweens. It's a ride. It really is. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Pastor Jonathan. These are so good, man. I love the conversation that we're having. Where can people subscribe to GoCast?
Sure, yeah. Type in GoCast into the search bar on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube. You'll be sure to find us.
Yeah, and we'd love to continue a conversation with you and have a conversation with you and your church, where you're at. If you have any questions, we'd love to help. We'd love to hear some feedback from you as well. So you can join us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we would love to connect with you and your church, celebrate your wins, help you in any way we can. Just have a conversation would be so good. Well, next week, we have a great conversation with Pastor Jonathan Domingo. He's a recent friend. I've I've met him a couple of years ago. He pastors in Ensenada, Mexico, an amazing church, Horizonte Church, powerful church. And he's gone through a real big personal battle, and still talk about a call in ministry. And not only has he survived and gone through it, but his church has thrived, and he's been just pushing through stronger. This is an excerpt from my conversation with Pastor Jonathan Domingo.
Our attitude has always been, how do we help the hurting at all costs? And it's not, how do we not ruffle feathers? How do we not offend people that have been Christians for a long time?
That is so good.
It's a hard decision to make, because it's a lot easier to focus on growing and maturing Christians than people that are full of issues and, figuring things out, because that gets really messy.
I know you're going to be inspired by this conversation next week with Pastor Jonathan Domingo. Thanks again for joining us at GoCast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of GoCast. We hope you feel inspired and better equipped to take your community for Christ. Make sure to subscribe to receive each new episode as it's released. Let's go and break the stat together.